Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have swatches for you from the brand LynB Designs. I have their Grunge but Make It Fashion collection that releases on November 21st. So in the description box below I will link the LynB site, I will link their Instagram page and my Instagram page where you can see more swatches of everything from this collection. So this collection has 6 polishes, kind of. And then there are 4 polishes that you can get if you spend certain amounts. So there's a polish that you get for free at $25, at $50, at $75, at $100, or you can purchase them individually for $10. So this collection either has 6 or 10 polishes depending on how you look at it. Either way, I am sharing all 10 with you today. I can only hold 8, but let's go ahead and get started. So first we have Philophobia, and this is described as a plummy maroon base with red shimmer, micro hollow shreds, and rainbow iridescent flakies. Here's our first coat of Philophobia. So this is a little bit sheer here on this first coat. The formula on this is really good though, really smooth, easy to apply, not too thick or too thin. You also get a great amount of these holographic flakes without having to do anything special to the bottle, and they also spread out nice and evenly across the nail. So here's our second coat, and this is completely opaque in 2 coats for me. You will want a glossy top coat to finish this off. It does dry slightly textured, so you'll want it for that reason, but also because it does dry on the dull side. This doesn't dry to like a glitter texture though, it's just those little flakes, and those flakes aren't difficult to remove, so it doesn't remove like a glitter either. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Rantipole, and this is described as a rusty base with scattered hollow micro shimmer, red to gold to copper to orange ultrachrome flakies, blue to cyan to sapphire ultrachrome flakies, and red to copper to orange shifting shimmer. So here's our first coat of Rantipole, and this one is also a little bit sheer here on this first coat. Again, the formula is good, not too thick or too thin, no running or pooling or staining. You get a ton of these flakies out, and they lie really smooth across the nail. You don't have to like work to get them to lie evenly, if that makes any sense, to like spread out nice and evenly across the nail. It does it all by itself. So here's our second coat, and this does cover for me completely in 2 coats. Depending on your application, you may want to go in for a 3rd coat. This is going to dry dull and slightly textured, so you'll want a glossy top coat to finish this off as well, but nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove either. So there's 2 coats. Up next we have Scintilla, and this is described as a honey mustard yellow base filled with gold, copper, and bronze flakies, and red to gold to copper shifting shimmer. So here's our first coat of Scintilla, and this one is pretty sheer on the first coat also. Again, good formula. This has a good amount of flakies, just like the last one did. It's got pretty much about the same amount, but the base of this is a little bit more sheer than that one. Here's our second coat, and this is building up nicely in 2 coats, but it's not completely opaque, so I am going to go in for a 3rd coat. The random sporadic larger flakes, you do have to kind of manipulate those if you want them on your nail and as where you want them to go, and those are also going to dry more textured than anything in this polish, so you are going to want 1, maybe 2 coats of a glossy top coat if you get some of those on your nail. You'll want that top coat anyway because this one is naturally going to dry slightly textured, but nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove or hard to take off where you'll need a peel off base coat. So there's 3 coats. Up next we have Nyctophilia, and this is described as a deep inky navy linear hollow base with blue to green to purple shifting shimmer. Here is our first coat of Nyctophilia, and this covers pretty well here on this first coat, just a little bit on the sheer side, so I am going to go in for a 2nd coat, but overall this one has covered the best so far. The formula on this is also really good, not too thick or too thin, no running or pulling, anything of that sort. The shimmer that's in here is very beautiful against this dark base as well. So here it is in 2 coats, and that is completely opaque for me. This one is going to dry down dull, so you'll want a glossy top coat to finish that off. Nothing in here is going to dry textured since this is primarily shimmer, and nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove either. So there is 2 coats. Next up, we have Alexithymia, and this is described as a warm purple pinky base with microgreen iridescent flakies and pink to orange to gold iridescent flakes. Here's our first coat of Alexithymia, and this one is quite sheer here on this first coat. You will, for these more delicate elements to a polish, want your base color to be a little bit more on the sheer side. That way it can be built up and you don't completely lose the delicate elements like these iridescent flakes. This is opaque in 2 coats for me. I could probably still go in for a 3rd coat though, so depending on how you prefer your polish, you may want to go in for 3. I was happy in 2 though. This one will dry dull, so you want a top coat for that reason, but nothing in here is going to dry textured or be difficult to remove. So there is 2 coats. Next up we have Finneyfugal, and this is described as a pale tan crelly base loaded with green to cyan to blue to purple ultrachrome flakies and copper shimmer. Here's our first coat of Finneyfugal, and I know I am probably butchering a lot of these names, and I apologize for that. This is quite sheer here on this first coat. This one is definitely going to have to be built up with 3 coats, but the formula on this is good. Again, not too thick or too thin. Here's our second coat, and depending on how picky you are, 2 might be okay for you. I am going to go ahead and go in for a 3rd coat. I would like to add a few more of those larger ultrachrome flakies and to build up that base color. This one is going to dry slightly textured because of those larger flakies, but they do lie relatively smooth, if that makes sense. It's not going to dry textured like a glitter, but it is going to dry a little bit uneven, so a top coat will help finish that off. It is completely opaque in 3 coats here, and since these are flakies as opposed to glitter, nothing in here is going to be hard to remove. So there is 3 coats. So the next 4 will be available for $10 each or freebies, and first up, if you spend $25, you'll get this one as a freebie, and this is called Sleigh Ride, and this is described as a pale pink chrome base loaded with hollow shimmer and hollow micro flakies. So here's our first coat of Sleigh Ride. And this covers pretty well on the first coat. It's obviously not completely opaque. I still can make out my nail line, so I am going to go in for a 2nd coat. The formula on this is really good. This is a very nice, beginner-friendly, easy to work with formula. It's not too thick. It stays right where you put it, but it's not going to run on you either. This is completely opaque in 2 coats for me. It also dries dull, but it dries with this like chromy finish, so I can appreciate that. It is going to dry slightly textured, and it is going to be a little bit messy to remove. So there is 2 coats. Up next is Hot Buttered Rum, and this is a freebie if you spend $50, or it will be available for $10, and this is described as a creamy russet red base with copper, bronze, silver ultrachrome chameleon flakies, and copper hollow scattered shimmer. Here's our first coat of Hot Buttered Rum, and this is pretty sheer on the first coat. It is another one that's going to have to be built up with 3 coats. The formula on this, again, really good, not too thick or too thin. These flakies lay nice and evenly across the nail. They spread out nice and evenly. You don't have to work to manipulate them to go right where you want them, if that makes sense. So this is building up in 2 coats. I can still make out my nail line, so I am going to go in for 3 coats. This one is also going to dry pretty dull, so you'll want a glossy top coat for that reason, and also to smooth it all out since these are going to dry slightly textured. And this is completely opaque here in 3 coats for me, and while this does dry slightly textured, again it dries to that flaky texture, so you're not going to need like 2 coats of it or anything like that, and nothing in here should be difficult to remove. Those flakies might make a little bit of a mess on your skin though. So there is 3 coats. Up next is Oi to the World, and this is your freebie if you spend $75, or once again it'll be available for $10, and this is described as a blue spruce colored base with hollow micro flakies and red to copper to gold to orange ultrachrome chameleon flakies. Here's our first coat of Oi to the World, and this is pretty opaque here on this first coat. It's not completely opaque, it is going to need a second, but it does cover pretty well. The formula on this is good, again not too thick or too thin, no running or pooling. This one also spreads out nice and evenly. All of the added elements, the glitters and the flakies, spread out nice and evenly where you don't have to manipulate them to go where you want them. So this is completely opaque in 2 coats here for me. You'll want a top coat to finish this off, both because it dries dull and because it dries textured. And this one is a little bit difficult to remove because there are those tiny white micro glitter in there. They do want to kind of stick to your nails just a little bit. So there is 2 coats. And lastly for today we have Let Tits Know. And you get this free if you spend $100, or again it will be available for $10. And this is described as a pale blue base with micro hollow shimmer, violet to blue to green shifting shimmer, and a rainbow of micro iridescent flakies. And here's our first coat of Let Tits Know. This is pretty sheer and patchy here on this first coat. The formula is pretty good. It's a little bit on the thicker side than anything else in this collection, but it's not difficult to work with whatsoever. But it does have a little bit of trouble self-leveling because it is on the thicker side. So here's our second coat, and this is building up nicely in 2 coats. It is definitely going to need a third though. This is also still a little bit patchy here on 2 coats. This one is also going to dry again on the dull side, so you'll want a glossy top coat for that reason. And it does dry with this odd texture. It's not like a glittered texture, it's not a flaky texture, it's like a packed with shimmer kind of texture. So this is completely opaque in 3 coats, and nothing in here should be difficult to remove. Nothing in here should stick to your nails. It shouldn't make a mess on your skin. It's just a nice, icy, frosty manicure for the winter months. So there is 3 coats. Let's talk about some favorites. So her names are terrible for me to pronounce, but Finneyfugal is a favorite. Again, white curly base. The added shimmer in here is something different for a white curly base for me without making it a pearl. So I can really appreciate that, but I really like the flakies that are in here. And then I love Let Tits Know. I don't even know how to say it. It's my 4th time saying it and I still can't do it. Let Tits Know. Let Tits Know. It's beautiful. It's so gorgeous for Christmas time, for January, for the beginning of February. I'm gonna get a lot of use out of this one. I really, really like this a lot. And that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this collection. Let me know if you plan on picking any of them up, and let me know what your favorite was. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time.